Adrian Spencer asks, how important was Newcastle to the sound of Dubstar? I think that's a really good question. Fascinating question, actually. I think one of the most important things about Dubstar coming from Newcastle wasn't the sound of Newcastle itself, because I'm not convinced that's actually reflected in the sound of the acts and the albums that we made, especially when we were living in Newcastle. I think it was more the fact that Newcastle was so separate, geographically speaking, maybe musically, maybe culturally, from the rest of the UK. There was space for us to just do whatever we want without even realizing that we were doing something that was a little bit different to what was going on maybe in the rest of the country, and certainly in the rest of the Northeast. It never really crossed our minds that we were doing something different, I suppose. Newcastle was going through a bit of a strange period in the sense that the 1980s, at least periods of it, seemed to be dominated by bands and acts from London. And then towards the end of the 80s and early 90s, there was the whole Manchester thing. So that was a musical scene that was dominated by acts that came from Manchester, or at least the Northwest. And I know amongst some of the musicians I was hanging around with, they were, a little bit, I think, jealous really, or felt a bit left out that, a place that was as vibrant as Newcastle should have had as much of a music scene as Manchester had. But Newcastle, it's not like that. It's not like Manchester. It's certainly not like London. Newcastle, I've often felt, is like a little island, just a bit separate from the rest of the country. And it's not just that, the nearest city, I think, is Edinburgh, which is 100 miles away, or go to the north, or maybe Carlisle, which is 70 miles to the west, or York and Leeds, which I think is the best part, 100 miles to the south, maybe not quite that far. It's not just that, it's the local accent is unique. The history of the city is unique. The attitude of the people is, unique. And it's something that these are people that I hold dear, and that I don't think I would be the man I am today if I hadn't spent 10 formative years in Newcastle. So, yeah, I do think that actually coming from Newcastle was fundamental to the Dubstar sound, but it was not because we grew out of the sound of Newcastle. It was more that Newcastle was such a fertile place. It enabled us to do basically whatever we wanted. Thank you so much, Newcastle.